Undroppables Playbook, a football podcast. With your hosts, Ashley and Michael, please sit back and enjoy the show.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Undroppables Playbook, a football podcast presented by the Undroppables and sponsored by Analyst Depot. I am one of your hosts, Ashley. This is my wonderful Sixers fan co-host, Michael Duncan, who's going to be half distracted today. How are you?
You know, we haven't lost yet. What more could I possibly ask for?
What's his face back and not having a face fracture?
How dare you? First of all, you're talking about the best player in the NBA, Joel Embiid. I'd say it's fine because we have B-Ball Paul, but I hate Doc Rivers.
Yeah.
There, I'm done. No more NBA. I'll stop.
Well, that's good because we have a lot to break down today. Our plan for this is we're going to break down, breaking news and stuff from the past week. We had the NFL draft this past week, so we're going to split it up into two different podcasts. Today, we're going to talk about all of the NFC teams and what we thought of their drafts, some of their players who they picked up, who they traded for. And next week, we'll talk about the AFC teams. So we can start with the news because there is a good amount of it. And some of the most shocking of all the news is that Deandre Hopkins was suspended for the first 6 games of this coming season. They say he tested positive for performance-enhancing drugs on a drug test that was from November. It's just coming out now, but this is like a combined, I think something like 12 games in a row that he would have missed because he missed a bunch of the last games due to his knee injury of the past season. Yeah. So that was kind of shocking and came out of nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Both, I believe, his agent or his press release guy and Hopkins, they came out and they were like, we don't get how he can test negative in October and December and test positive in November. We're looking into it. I don't know. I mean, they haven't said that they're going to argue the NFL on it. There's a technical word, and I completely forget what it is. Appeal, thank you.
They said they're not appealing.
Okay, yeah. So I guess he's missing the first 6 weeks. I think the only bright side for Arizona is probably maybe he stays healthier through the playoffs. Mm-hmm. I don't know. The Arizona Cardinals were like the most plateaued team in the NFL last year. Like they peaked just way too early. So I don't know. Maybe this will help them not peak that early. It's a stupid way to look at it, but I've got nothing else positive to say about it, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yep. He denies all of the accusations, all of the results, but doesn't appeal. That's what's interesting to me. Another news, NFL says that they could not substantiate any of the claims from Hugh Jackson that the Browns tanked games when he was there. They say there's no evidence to support that claim. The NFL schedule will be released on the 12th, but today they did release the international game schedule. I'll go down the list. We have the first 3 in London, which is Vikings versus Saints on October 2nd, Giants versus Packers on October 9th, and Broncos versus Jaguars on October 30th.
And then specifically the first 2 are at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, with the third one being at Wembley.
Which one did you go to?
I was at Tottenham Hotspur. Both of the games last year were at Tottenham Hotspur.
Gotcha. The next one is the game in Germany, I believe, which is Seahawks versus Buccaneers, which is on November 13th. And that game will make Tom Brady the first ever NFL quarterback to start an NFL game in 4 separate countries.
Yes.
Interesting.
And I believe that it's in Munich, and I think that's the first ever German NFL game, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then the last one is the San Francisco 49ers versus the Arizona Cardinals, which is on November 21st in Mexico.
You going to go to any
international games? Let me tell you, that Giants-Packers game flying to London sounds super fun. Sounds super cool. I've never been to London, so I don't know. I'm thinking about it. The flights this far out aren't that expensive, so.
Yeah, I was looking earlier today. I was talking to my friend. I guess for those of you that weren't listening then, but I was in. Oh, you just said it. I was in London for a game last year. I have a friend that lives there, just moved there last year. So we were talking today and working on figuring out if I'm going to go up for one. I might go to the Munich one.
That's
meet
fun.
them in Munich. We'll see, but
invite me.
I don't know. It's a good excuse to travel. If you pay for my plane ticket, you are free to come.
Why can't I just pay
Happy
for
to
my
have
money
you.
to go with you? Okay.
Because you asked me to invite you specifically,
Yeah, I'm not saying you have to
implying
pay
that
for
I
me. I'm just
somehow
saying
have
take
control
me.
over this situation.
You
So
said you were thinking about going, so let me come.
yeah,
Let's see. Where do we want to go next? The NFL is planning a 2-day diversity networking seminar for prospective head coaches and GMs because that is their solution to not having enough representation is just 2 days of a networking seminar. It seems like it's just a half-assed attempt, but sure. Matt Ryan came out today and says that there is a, quote, pretty good chance that he would still be with the Falcons if they had not pursued Deshaun Watson, that was his tipping point, and that is really the reason he left the Falcons. Tyrann Mathieu was he was a free agent. I know I wrote traded, that was my mistake. Was a free agent, and he decided to go to the Saints. He came from the Chiefs. That was Monday. And that happened immediately after the window for the compensatory picks closed. So the Chiefs will not get a compensatory pick for him leaving.
and it also doesn't count against the Saints compensatory picks because they had a couple big name free agency. I don't know. I haven't looked to see, how many they had coming in versus leaving, but there's a decent chance that they could get a decent one. And now Tyrann Mathieu will not count against that.
Yeah.
And I will say, just real quick, doubling back to the diversity thing, at least they're doing something. And, Galvanize started as like a 1 day or a 2 day thing, Hopefully this can just spread into more things. I don't know. I'd rather them do something than nothing, even if it starts as a half attempt.
Yep. That was not the right words, but okay. You said half-assed.
I didn't want to curse.
Oh, okay. Well,
I didn't do it on purpose.
Okay. And then the last thing, I know we're not talking about the Titans today, but the Titans did get Malik Willis, the quarterback, in the draft, and Ryan Tannehill came out and said that he does not feel like it's his responsibility to mentor Malik Willis, that if Malik Willis learns a couple things from him along the way, then so be it, but he doesn't really want to be a mentor to Malik. But he also did have some interesting comments about his mental health following his round 1 playoffs loss with the Titans, saying that he was having, nightmares, and the emotional scars of losing that game is something that he will carry around with him forever. He did seek professional help after it for anxiety and depression. And I just say I appreciate that, because any large athlete talking about mental health a couple of years ago, we wouldn't imagine that would ever be something that happened. So hearing him getting to talk about it is really great. I mean, not great for him, you know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I also think, generally as we do on Twitter and in the media, like it's probably a little bit over. We're giving Ryan, as you wrote, Tannehill. As she spelled Tannehill in the show doc, which is just incredible. You're on a roll today.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
We're overreacting to the idea that he doesn't want to be a mentor. You always like to hear when a guy is like, obviously I'm going to do everything I can to help him. Like, I don't think anyone is, no one, I don't think Ryan Tannehill is going to go out of his way to be like a jerk to Malik Willis or like purposely not answer his questions. But it's also, he's right. Like, it's not his job to be a quarterback's coach. Like, I think we're being like, he's going to end up being a mentor to some degree, obviously, because Malik Willis is going to ask him questions. But Ryan Tannehill's job right now is to be the starting quarterback. Like, I don't know. It's always annoying when this stuff gets like very, just over talked about in the news and the media because it's like painting Ryan Tannehill out to be someone that he's not. And also, like, I think it'd be a very different situation if, they very clearly drafted his, his replacement, and they didn't. Malik Willis was a 3rd round pick, I believe. It's not a guy that you picked in the 1st round that is clearly coming to take the job. Like, Malik Willis could never start a game in the NFL, and I wouldn't be shocked, because anything after the 1st round, there's no guarantees at quarterback. So, yeah, just wanted to say something quick about that.
Did you see Kurt Warner's comments?
Yes.
Yeah, your guy.
Well, that was like his whole career.
Yeah.
After he left the Rams, he was the mentor to Eli Manning. But and that's the difference, is he was brought in basically to be a bridge quarterback. He was brought in to be a bridge quarterback for Matt Leinart and the Cardinals. He just happened to end up outplaying Matt Leinart on the Cardinals. And he, when you do that, like, he won the job fair and square after a bit too long of hoping that Matt Leinart was going to be the guy. But yeah, I don't know. It paints Ryan Tannehill in an unflattering way, I think, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, I agree. But we do have a lot to talk about with the NFL draft. First, we'll start. Last week, we did our round 1 mock draft. Our final tally of how we did. We correctly predicted 3 picks, the spot they were going to be drafted and the team they ended up with. And that was Trayvon Walker, Aiden Hutchinson, and Ahmad Gardner. But we did correctly predict 25 out of the 32 players that would be drafted in the first round. And I did say Sky Moore to the Chiefs, but that was just a round later.
Did we not say Penny? Wait, you had the Steelers, didn't you? Who did you take for the Steelers? Was it not Kenny Pickett?
No, we had taken.
Don't say we. You took him.
Not we. No, I know, but when we were talking about it, you agreed with me. But it was. Hold on. Who did we take? I think it was Malik Willis that we took there, because that was all of leading up to that was when the Steelers started talking about how much they loved him and all that stuff. Let me see. I have our draft right here.
No, I think you're right. Now that I'm thinking about it, I think you're right.
Yeah.
I actually got I did the undrafted mock draft with Jax Falcone, and I had taken Kenny Pickett, and they all gave me a really hard time about it. But
yeah, well, it's because there was this last media push about how the Steelers loved Malik Willis, and that was going to be the guy they went after if he was there. And I don't know if they just didn't expect Kenny Pickett to be there at 20, because Kenny Pickett was the first one off the board.
I think it was just a misleading thing, honestly.
I agree. But we can get into the draft. Which division would you like to start with?
Let's start with the East, because we both know we both want to talk about that more than anything. Yeah. Do you want to start with the Cowboys? Because I hate them.
I have to do the Cowboys? Sure.
Well, no, you don't have. I meant us. Do you want
we can
to
start with the Cowboys.
Us?
We can start with the Cowboys.
Great English.
Cowboys.
I'm killing it. Okay, yeah. So the Cowboys, they took offensive tackle Tyler Smith in the first round, and I think that I think recently the Cowboys have been really, really good at not reaching for a need, and this is the first draft in a while where I did not feel that way. I thought Tyler Smith was kind of a bit of a reach. He's got a lot of upside, maybe more upside than most of the offensive tackles or offensive linemen in this draft, because he has amazing physical tools, but he has very little technique. He needs a lot of work on that. And the Cowboys are probably hoping that he's going to come in and start day one. So that in itself, that's a really big boomer bust type pick right away for the Cowboys at a position of need. And then you go into the second round and you get a guy, Sam Williams, an edge rusher out of Ole Miss, and he was suspended from Ole Miss in July of 2020 following an arrest on felony sexual battery.
Yep. Shout
out to the Cowboys and just constantly drafting guys that do bad stuff.
And say bad things.
And they're just the worst, man. They just don't give a crap. And then you get a wide receiver in the third round in Jalen Tolbert, who I think is fine. And that's kind of the way that I feel about a lot of their picks after that. I think obviously day 3, you just took some shots, some smart, intelligent shots on maybe high upside-ish players, but low floor type. It's the third day of the draft. But yeah, I don't know. If I'm a Cowboys fan, I'm not walking away very happy or excited. The possibility is there, but if I was grading this on a scale of thumbs up or thumbs down, I'd probably give it a single thumbs down. What about you?
Agree.
Any thoughts?
I completely agree. I think they did all right with their later picks, picking up 2 inside linebackers in the 7th and 9th. I think they made smarter decisions to add depth where they needed to over
the 5th and the 6th.
Oh, sorry. Oh, because I was reading the numbers.
The 9th round, yeah.
No, sorry, I was reading the numbers. We're doing great today. In the 5th and the 6th, because they needed depth. I think that's a big thing. But again, none of it really stood out, and I don't know how much of a game changer that some of these players are going to be. And a division that seems to be picking up a little bit, in a division that made a huge splash in this draft, makes me a
Half
little
of it
worried
anyway.
for the Cowboys. And I don't really care. That makes me worried. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
moving on real quick to the other team that I think the NFC East in particular was very much divided between two drafts that I really, really liked and two drafts that I did not really, really like. So I'm going to go straight to the Commanders, who were the other team that I did not really like their draft. I thought that Jahan Dotson, a wide receiver out of Penn State, was a guy that I actually really liked. But as like a late first round, early second round pick. So again, they moved down 5 spots. That could have taken Chris Olave. We'll talk about that later because I also think that was a reach. But, they got a couple picks in the later rounds, I think the 3rd and the 4th. They also could have taken Jamison Williams. Like, there was a lot of really talented players on the board, but they moved back. And then I just think that they made a massive reach on Jahan Dotson. I like Jahan Dotson, but it feels like they could have gotten him later. I guess probably not with the way wide receivers were flying off the board, but like, man, it just feels like it was a really big reach in the first round. And that's unfortunate because it is a position of need, and that only really makes me feel kind of worse about it. But yeah, I mean, do you have any other thoughts on Jahan Dotson, or like, do you typically like agree?
I like the idea of Jahan Dotson being added to that receiver room alongside, Terry. But again, I think there were other needs that could have been met at that position. And I do think there might have been a better fit than Jahan Dotson. I do think he's going to be good. I think my big takeaway, honestly, from this draft with the Commanders is that I'm going to have to start looking at my fantasy teams, because I think the fantasy players on the Commanders are going to be, it's going to be a toss-up. Now you also added Brian Robinson Jr., the running back from Alabama, to the running back room, which is going to be really interesting. I think that's a great pickup for them. I think he's just so fast and explosive. I think that's a big thing for me is this. I kept thinking every time they were on the board, I kept thinking about my fantasy teams.
Yeah, I mean, he's also a bigger guy, and I think he, in theory, is like kind of fits a role that isn't really occupied too much by Antonio Gibson or J.D. McKissick. Like, in theory, I think you'd kind of want Gibson to do some of the stuff that he's probably going to do. So it does kind of, I don't know. It's a shame. I wish they would just kind of let Antonio Gibson carry the load, but maybe this just means that they don't think that he can. I also think Sam Howell in the 5th was a really, I think he was a good value.
I agree.
It's hilarious to me that they had to, Ian Rappaport immediately reported that the Commanders reached out to Carson Wentz prior to drafting Howell, a guy in the 5th round, and to say that he is not coming to compete for the starting job. Holy crap. I loved Carson Wentz. That dude is soft, man. That is, and I don't use the word soft very often, but like, holy crap. Come on, man. Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It was a fine draft. I maybe a little bit better than the Cowboys, like maybe like this much of a thumbs down, but like I don't. It wasn't really exciting to me. I think they could have done a lot better. They drafted 8 players, and that's good, I guess.
Yeah, we can jump into
the Giants or the Eagles first.
Yeah, you had a lot of talking, so I'll jump into the Giants first. The Giants ended up drafting 11 players. This was Joe Shane and Brian Daboll's first draft together, the first draft with this basically entire revamped organization. And what a start. We had 2 first-round picks. We ended up keeping both of them. At 5, we drafted Kayvon Thibodeau, and at 7, we drafted Evan Neal, and I was over the moon happy. And they played it so smart in a way that I don't think Dave Gettleman would have. Dave Gettleman would have been on the clock at 5 and said, oh, look, all of those offensive tackles are there. Let's take one. But if you have all 3 there and you're only 2 picks back, you'll be able to get one of those top 3 offensive tackles and Kayvon Thibodeau. So walking away with both of those players was huge. I told you when we did our mock draft that Evan Neal was the tackle that I wanted to come most, that I thought would fit into scheme most. I was very excited about that. One of the picks that has the fan base a little bit torn is the 2nd round pick with Wan'Dale Robinson, the wide receiver from Kentucky. This was when some of the fan base started turning on Joe Shane, but I love it. I really do.
You love the draft? You love that pick?
No, I think he's going to be a good fit. I like it. I like the idea of certain sets with Kadarius Toney and Wan'Dale Robinson on the field together. Like they're both so dynamic. I understand the hate of you basically drafted a second Kadarius Toney. So I get that, where there are other needs that had to be met, but I think it's exciting. And all in all, I do love the draft. We added some much needed depth. We picked up another tight end, which was needed in Daniel Bellinger in the 4th round. I really like Cordell Flott, the corner from LSU. That's the big thing is, we took our shots on the big guys in the 1st round and then added some much needed depth to positions that really, really needed it on the line and in the secondary.
Yeah, I mean, so we FaceTimed when Kayvon Thibodeau and Evan Neal went off. I thought that they might have had the best first round of just about any team. Like I just think those are 2 incredible picks. They're both good value, and I just I think they're also 2 pretty big needs for the team.
Yeah.
So awesome there. The rest of the draft, I don't really know how I feel. I mean, they took a lot of players, and that's fine. I thought that specifically Joshua Ezeudu, offensive guard out of North Carolina, who they took in the 3rd round. I think that was a bit of a reach. I don't think he was really expected to go until at least the 4th or the 5th. And I don't like the Wan'Dale Robinson pick. There was a lot of other wide receivers on the board that I thought were significantly better, not to mention different than Kadarius Toney. You can only use so many scat back wide receiver. Yeah, like it's fun to have one gadget guy, I guess, if you're going to hyper target him. But like, how useful is 2 guys that you have to hyper target while you're paying Kenny Golladay $1 billion? Like, and you have Saquon Barkley. Like, I don't know. That felt like I'm fine with them taking a wide receiver, but I just don't know why they took that one. I mean, Sky Moore and George Pickens were still on the board. John Mechie, all 3 guys that I like better than Wan'Dale Robinson, probably. Maybe not John Mechie, but like either way, this. Yeah,
that was the one I want. If I had to choose one of them, it would have been Sky Moore, and that's just my deep, undying love for Sky Moore. But listen, I love the kid. I think at least what they're saying is they have a clear vision for how to use him. Again, that's kind of just coach and GM speak, but I don't know. I'm excited, and for the first time in a little while, I'm excited, and I'm kind of just going to trust the process. I tweeted out something that's like, I haven't felt happy about an NFL draft from the New York Giants in 5 years. What?
The Sixers are down by 14 points, and you have to throw out a trust the process.
Relax.
Ridiculous. You're only trusting the process if you're losing on purpose. The Giants have never lost on purpose. They just suck.
But the one you did say, Ezeudu, the kid from North Carolina, the guard, I do think that one was a reach, and I do think that kid has a little bit of development that has to happen. That's why I think it was a bigger reach, is because I think he's going to be a great player, but I think it's a lot more development than some of the other players that were on the board.
Dan Bradley points out that Tyquan Thornton was also on the board when the Giants picked a wide receiver. That I would have felt equally as bad about, probably. And then last but not least, in the NFC East, we have the Philadelphia Eagles. By the way, the Giants get a thumbs up. So I'm just going to do that. That's going to be my grading system.
Okay.
So for the most part, the tough part is the Eagles went into this draft, I believe, with the most picks, with 10 or so. And they left with 5 players, which is tough. You wish you could have gotten a little bit more. You had a first, a second, a third, and then 2 sixths after trading up and trading back. But obviously the big night started
with 5 draft players and then another player.
Well, yes, I'm getting there. So the big night started when you traded up. You hopped over the Ravens, who I was convinced were going to take Jordan Davis if he was on the board. And very thankfully, apparently, Howie agreed with me because he jumped over them to take Jordan Davis, defensive tackle out of Georgia. He's a unicorn. He's a monster. He is just unlike many humans that currently walk on this earth.
He's so big.
He was also the defensive player of the year. He was the winner of the Chuck Bednarik Award and played on the best defense in college football.
Yeah.
So Jordan Davis, a huge get, also with Fletcher Cox and our other defensive tackle who is escaping my mind at the moment. their contracts expiring after this season. And then as the Eagles were preparing to be on the clock at 18, a trade was made. The Houston Texans traded up. Was it the Texans?
I don't know.
Yeah.
After that, my brain turned to mush.
No, of course it's the Titans. What am I talking about?
Yes. Okay.
No, it's the Titans. The Texans were on the clock at 13. And the Eagles traded for AJ Brown, wide receiver, 24 years old, formerly of the Tennessee Titans, a former second-round pick, entering his 4th year in the league. They immediately signed him to a 4-year, $100 million contract with $57 million guaranteed, which makes him the 4th highest paid wide receiver in the league. They only had to give up the 18th overall pick and the 101st overall pick, which was a compensatory 3rd-round pick. Obviously, the reason it didn't cost that much in terms of draft capital was because they had to pay him a lot of money. But all in all, you walked away with probably the best wide receiver you could have gotten in that day. I mean, the guy that was drafted at that spot, Treylon Burks, who the Titans drafted, I think at that point you're basically hoping that he becomes AJ Brown.
They drafted
the
a
nice
lookalike.
part is,
yeah.
Yes, the nice part is AJ Brown is already AJ Brown. 2 of the 3 years of his career, PFF had him ranked as the number 4 wide receiver in the NFL. It's not the end all be all, but I think that says a lot. And he's also a massive, it's a big change from Devonta Smith. Smith, they complement each other really well. He also has a very lovely friendship with Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts was at his AJ Brown's daughter's birthday party last week, and they were throwing together and apparently joking about this being a possibility, and then it happened. So yes, that's awesome. That's very exciting. In the 2nd round, they drafted, speaking of lookalikes, a Jason Kelce lookalike, a center, Cam Jurgens Jurgens, I'm not really sure yet, out of Nebraska. This dude, like literally, if you look up his measurables, he is Jason Kelce.
Yes.
And I know I said very similar things about Tyler Lindenball, who was drafted in the 1st round by the Ravens. Lindenball's bigger. And that was kind of the main difference. Some people actually liked Cam Jurgens as the best center in this draft. It was either him or Lindenball. Either way, Jason Kelce was like live on a draft show, and he basically endorsed the pick. He was like, this is who I told the Eagles I liked. He's my favorite center prospect of the last 3 years. I don't know if I love the idea of drafting a guy in the 2nd round that is not going to play this year, as Jason Kelce is an Iron Man, knock on wood. But, it's an interesting pick, and I think if it works out in the long term, they're going to feel really good about it. And then in the 3rd round, the last big pick was Nakobe Dean, who is inside linebacker out of Georgia, arguably the best linebacker on that defense.
Justice for Nakobe Dean.
Had 2 others drafted in the 1st round. Nakobe fell to the 3rd, apparently based on certain medical issues that came up. But the Eagles are saying that he's going to be ready for rookie minicamps. So, yeah, they also drafted, an inside linebacker and a tight end in the 6th round. Nothing too exciting there, but they walked away with, I think, probably 3 day 1 starters in A.J. Brown, Jordan Davis, and Nakobe Dean. Jordan Davis, depending on Fletcher Cox and whatnot, he'll play the snaps of a starter. And Cam Jurgens, who you hope is your center of the next 10 years after Jason Kelce retires. So I think they had one of the best drafts in the entire NFL, and I give them 2 thumbs up.
I give them 2 thumbs up as well. I vote them as winner of this division. Pains me to say.
Howie was feeling it. He was wheeling and dealing. He was feeling it.
The photo of him with the binoculars was all over Twitter that night. Photo.
He was just going off, man.
Yeah, he was. You and I were on FaceTime right around the time where the Eagles were on the clock. Basically, right before they went on the clock the first time until AJ Brown was traded. And you said, look at your phone, and then hung up on me. And then I called you back with my jaw literally on the floor. That came out of nowhere. But apparently they had this deal in the works. They said they were not making this trade unless the deal was ready to be signed and delivered. Yep. And, part of it, I think a little bit of it might be the fact that the Lions drafted Jamison Williams right before. I think maybe if they were able to get their hands on Jamison Williams,
so I disagree with that.
This doesn't happen. Why?
Because based on all the reports, they were never So we argued about this actually as it happened that
Yeah.
and this before any of the reporting, but you said, it's likely that, because maybe they were trying to trade up to 13 to get Jameson Williams, who was unsniped. That doesn't make sense because they know who's getting picked long before we do. They knew that Jameson Williams was off the board. They made that move for Jordan Davis.
No, I agree. I'm saying though, but
no,
like,
and sorry, but and then
Jameson's
with
not
AJ
there.
Brown. With AJ Brown, they said that deal with AJ Brown was not at all dependent on the wide receivers being taken.
Okay.
Like they had
I
that
didn't hear
deal
that.
in the works and being done basically regardless of what wide receivers were on the board or not.
Gotcha. I didn't see that.
Yeah. So that was something Howie said in his press conference.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to put that out there.
Gotcha. Yeah, but that was, I literally called you back by jaw on the floor. That stunned me. And then I know we're not talking again about the Titans day, but then they drafted a complete AJ Brown 2.0.
The guy who hope turns into AJ Brown.
Yes, exactly. But yes, the Eagles are my winner of this division for the draft, and I think you agree.
I definitely agree.
Thumbs up.
Would you like to go to the NFC North?
Sure, let's go to the NFC North. Want to go in order that we have here?
Yeah, let's do it.
So the Packers walked away with 11 picks. Some of the most surprising from them is the fact that they didn't take a wide receiver in the first round. I saw this tweet that was like, Aaron Rodgers must be some long-term case study on how to make your franchise quarterback angry enough where he's angry, but he doesn't leave. And that felt like exactly what it was. They didn't take a wide receiver in the first round. They took their first wide receiver at the second pick in the second round with Christian Watson, the wide receiver from North Dakota State. I do like Quay Walker, the inside linebacker from Georgia. I think their first round was okay.
They also took a linebacker and a defensive tackle from Georgia, just like the Eagles, which is funny.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Quay Walker and Devontae Wyatt.
It was. I don't know. I don't blame them for not taking a wide receiver at the end of the first because honestly, like everyone that I thought deserved to go in the first round was gone. They were long gone. Honestly, I mean, there's a reason Jahan Dotson was drafted at 16. And I feel like I'm hating on Jahan Dotson. I like Jahan Dotson, but I don't think he should have gone that early. But yeah, I mean, they needed a linebacker. They needed defensive line help. And I think those are two solid picks. The issue I have is the wide receiver you got was Christian Watson. And I just think he is very much a project. Like for a guy like Aaron Rodgers, like who you need to build trust with. I don't think that you want a guy that is a project when you're trying to compete right now. And that it's just very shocking. I mean, they have their pick of any wide receivers on the board, like Wan'Dale Robinson. That was a joke.
Sky Moore,
Tyquan Thornton.
George Pickens.
More realistically, Sky Moore, George Pickens. Like there was a lot of solid talent that went in the second, even the third round. Some of them would have been a reach for sure, but I don't know. Christian Watson has a really high ceiling, but he also has a fairly low floor, and that scares me for a team that desperately needs wide receiver help. I would have much preferred they take George Pickens, who I think it's much more clear what his outcome is going to be.
He has a safer floor and a higher ceiling. Yeah. And they ended up taking two other wide receivers in the draft in the fourth round and in the seventh in Romeo Dubes from Nevada and Samori Tour from Nebraska. So they drafted a couple in hopes to add some depth, but they needed a wide receiver. I just don't really love the one they got.
But I agree.
I think another one with this is depth to the places where they need a little bit of depth, but I don't know. I kind of give this one a straight middle thumb, I guess. I don't.
That's fair.
Okay.
Yeah. So the Vikings were next. They traded back in the first round, I think twice, actually. Or was it just once?
Twice.
So twice. And they ended up selecting Georgia safety Lewis Kine, safety out of Georgia, with the last pick in the first round. And they selected Andrew Booth, cornerback out of Clemson, with the 10th pick in the second round. Two things that I think that they really needed, which was defensive back help. Two awesome picks for them. Andrew Booth definitely slid a little bit more than I thought he would and more than I think he deserved to. And the safety out of Georgia is another guy that I like. I wasn't necessarily sure if he'd go in the first round, but I think for the most part, like they really shored up like some offensive line and some defense, and I think that's what they really needed to focus on. But there wasn't anything like crazy exciting. They spent a 5th round pick on a running back, a 6th round pick on a wide receiver. That's other than that, it was just kind of really defensive backs and offensive line, and I think that's smart. I think that is solid, if not exciting draft.
Yeah, I think that's none of it like stands out to me and made me thrilled, but it's what they needed. It's just the Vikings. They literally looked like they wanted to take the first day off. Yeah. But yeah, they got a bunch of players, and for a team like that, I think that helps. If you didn't want to reach, you grabbed a couple extra players in the deal. Good for you.
Yeah. Next.
I can do it next. You can go. No, you go.
All right, the Bears, they suck, man, and they hate Justin Fields. They didn't have a first round pick because they took Justin Fields. They took Kyler Gordon, cornerback out of Washington, in the 2nd round. They took Jaquan Brisker, safety out of Penn State, who I like, in the 2nd round. And then they finally took a wide receiver, Velus Jones Jr., in the 3rd round. Man, like, I don't know, man. I feel really. It's not that bad of a draft, honestly. I mean, they had 10 picks, I think. 11. They had 11 picks, so they drafted for volume. It's a bad roster, and that's a good thing because you get a lot of swings on a bad roster. And I think Gordon and Brisker are both like solid choices, but they didn't do anything to help Justin Fields, and that sucks. Like, they didn't draft an offensive player until the 71st pick. And they spent it on a guy who is older than A.J. Brown. Mm-hmm. A wide receiver that is older than A.J. Brown. And he's basically projects as like a slot receiver. He's just very low ceiling, I guess, like a fine floor, but like, I don't know,
it's like,
man.
His thing is like the yak. He has a lot of yards after catch, which again, like, isn't like the best help to Justin Fields. Poor kid.
Yeah, I mean, Justin Fields is just set up to fail, and it sucks because I like Justin Fields as a talent, but he might have the worst surrounding supporting cast in the entire NFL next season. We'll see. Yeah. But hey, at least they got a punter in the 7th round. That's exciting. They get 1 thumb down for me.
I agree. I'll vote. I'll agree with that. And the last in this division is the Lions, who had the 2nd overall pick and got their home talent in Aiden Hutchinson from Michigan. They traded up, right? They didn't have 12 originally. That was a trade up.
Correct. They had 32.
Correct. Yep. They traded up to grab Jameson Williams at the 12 spot, the wide receiver from Alabama. And then, a couple of other great picks, another defensive end, which is great. Safety, tight end, couple linebackers, and a corner. I put them in the 1st spot in this division. I think they had a really great draft. And trading up for Jameson Williams was something that I loved. On draft night, you and I were talking about it, that I loved Jameson Williams, and I was a little bit sad at first because it's the Lions, but I don't know. This Lions team is shaping up to look fairly decent, knock on wood. But this draft for them, I think, is everything they could have asked for, and I'm really excited to see where some of these players.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to consider the fact that, like, to go from, where did they pick Jameson? Was it 11?
12.
Right in front of me. 12. So they went from 32 to 12, and they only gave up the 32nd, the 34th, and the 66th pick. So, like, some decent picks, but, like, you get a really, really, who might be the most talented wide receiver in this entire class.
He would have gone top 5, like, if he wasn't
If he didn't tear his ACL,
Yes, he would have been top 5.
Yeah. I agree. So, I mean, I think that's a great pick. I think, I didn't feel great about it at first, I'll be honest, but it's grown me a lot. Especially seeing how the wide receivers ended up going off the board, because I thought wide receiver was a need, but it didn't feel like a need enough where they had to trade up from 32 to 12. But I think, considering what they gave up, considering who left the board, I think they read the board really well. And they got a guy that they loved and a guy who can hopefully grow alongside whomever their future quarterback is. And also Amon-Ra St. Brown, TJ Hawkinson, Deandre Swift. Like, they have a really solid young core of players. And also Aiden Hutchinson is great. I love that, he's staying in Michigan. That's just very exciting.
That's the other thing.
Yeah,
I love Jamison Williams alongside Amon-Ra St. Brown, who was amazing at the end of last year. I think adding a wide receiver like Williams, who's a little bit of an alpha, a wide receiver one, will help bolster the rest of the receiving core. I think it's really great for them. You said young core to this team. They are so young and very talented, and I love seeing the Lions take a little bit of risk and not play it safe and willing to take that jump and lose out on a couple of extra picks to take the risk. I think it's a sign that this franchise is moving at least a little bit in the right direction.
And they added a lot of athleticism in the later rounds, which I think is always just a good
game plan.
I think it's a good because at least they have a high upside. Late round picks don't often work anyway. So at least the possibility of you getting someone, hyper athletic, that I don't know what the numbers say, but in my mind, it makes more sense. So moving on, would you? Oh, they get like 1.5 thumbs up.
Yeah,
I guess.
And they are the winners.
Up, whatever. Yeah, of the NFC North for sure.
Winners of the NFC North.
I'm gonna go to the NFC South.
Sure.
Would you like to start?
Sure. So the Buccaneers, who won the division last year, didn't have a first round pick. They had the first pick of the second round. Their first pick was Logan Hall, the defensive end from Houston. They ended up taking Rachaad White in the third, which is an interesting pick, along with K-Dot in the fourth. So they added a couple of offensive guys to this roster. Had 2 defensive ends. Again, a big word for them is depth. I do like taking Zion McCollum in the 5th round, the corner. Their secondary killed them at the end of last year with all of the injuries and stuff. So just getting to add a little bit of depth there is great. And I think he will be a fairly good fit on the Bucs. Nothing too splashy, but I think you see they're starting to add a little bit of these younger offensive guys because that team is getting old. And at some point soon, a lot of them are not going to be there. So drafting guys like K-Dot and Rachaad White are starting to plan for your future a little bit in advance.
Not to mention they drafted a punter in the 4th round, which they could not have done if they did not trade back out of the first round. They traded back from 27 to 33.
Yep.
And I think they got, I think defensive line is starting to be a position of need. And I think, I never think it's a bad idea to invest in either line.
I agree.
So that's great. And also I just like when punters get drafted, I think it's fun. They get a solid thumbs up for me. I don't think it was anything too exciting, but I think they drafted some guys like Rachaad White and like K-Dot who can possibly, have an impact in 2022. They can really get on the field possibly. So
I agree.
No issue with what they did, really. Next, we have the Saints. And it's interesting. I like what they did with their first 2 picks with Chris Olave and Trevor Penning. I like those players. I thought Trevor Penning made a lot of sense for them because they lost Teron Armstead. But I don't like the way they approached this draft at all. I think it was really stupid, actually. I think they might have handled the draft as bad as almost any team from making that trade with the Eagles prior to the draft, which I thought at the time was stupid for the Saints, unless you're trading up for a quarterback, which I didn't think they should do in this draft, unless they loved the guy, which clearly they didn't. They traded all the way up to 11 to get Chris Olave. They took him up before Jamison Williams, which I didn't think was right. I also just think that's way too high for Chris Olave, who I like, but not that much. They gave up a first next year and a 2024 second to get that second first round pick. And they used those 2 first round picks to get Chris Olave and Trevor Penning. Both will have an impact on day 1, most likely. But God, I don't think they're a good team. I don't think they're in a position to really compete. And with that being the case, why not just sit at 16? You could have gotten Jahan Dotson or Treylon Burks if you had just stayed where you were, but you had to get Chris Olave because why not? They're clearly very confident in their ability to say Olave is better than the other guys. They only made 5 total picks, which is not a lot. And they don't have a first rounder next year. They don't have a quarterback of the future. And I don't think they're a very good team right now. So
I agree. I think my way to sum it up is that they're acting like they're 1 or 2 players away from a championship when they are not. And you gave up future capital for a team that should be collecting all of your future capital and keeping it very close to the chest.
Absolutely.
And again, like, I love the Trevor Penning pick. I do love that pick, but again, like, Chris Olave is going to be a great player. I think he's going to work decent on the Saints scheme and offense, but it's, again, I think that I just have a sour taste in my mouth because of, like you said, the way they approached it.
Yeah, you lose Drew Brees and you lose Sean Payton. You shouldn't be making a move to win this year. You're not. You're not gonna. Which, you clip that if they do. I don't care. I hate what they draft. They were like 2 thumbs
Old
down.
takes exposed.
I think it was very bad. 2 thumbs down, just horrible. Next up is the Falcons. Would you like to talk about them, or would you like me to?
You can. I'll jump into the Panthers after.
All right. So they took the first wide receiver off the board with Drake London, wide receiver out of USC. A big dude, a really athletic dude. And you get kind of like a really interesting, like kind of 1-2 punch with Kyle Pitts and Drake London, like 2 very scary players, but also London also doesn't have the floor that I think Kyle Pitts does. London, I don't know. I would not have taken him in the top 10. I think he's got an incredible ceiling, but I'm not convinced in his ability to separate at the next level. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how that's really going to. That scares me. That is really worrisome if you can't separate at. Like, if I don't see you consistently separating at the college level, I'm not totally convinced that you can do it at the NFL level. And that's way more important than just being a contested catch machine. That being said, I like Drake London. I don't hate what they did. So whatever. And the rest of their draft made a lot of sense, I think. The edge out of Penn State was a guy that a lot of people thought would go at the end of the first round. Arnold, I'm not going to say his last name. Arnold E. Edge out of Penn State. They took Desmond Ridder in the 3rd round, which I think is just a really smart thing to do. Worst case scenario, he doesn't pan out, but he was a 3rd round pick and it doesn't matter. And you take a quarterback next year in the 1st.
And you're paying him rookie money to be a backup.
Yep. You have very little to lose on that pick. Yep. Tyler Algier, running back in the 5th round, I think is an interesting prospect.
Yep.
And I think, especially after cutting Mike Davis, he could have a role pretty immediately. So yeah, it's interesting. It was a good draft, I think. It was a really bad roster, so it's really hard to say that any pick was not a need. But then, like, I think that they still made smart picks and smart bets. If Drake London pans out, then they're going to be in really good shape, hopefully. So I think a lot of this, I mean, this sounds obvious, but I think a lot of this draft is very much going to depend on the progression of Drake London at the next level.
I completely agree. And I do like the idea of him and Kyle Pitts playing together. But the quarterback's a big issue for the Falcons, but I do love the Ridder pick, and I do like the Algier pick. I think they played it so smart. Basically, in general, I think they took a very good guess with Drake London. I give them a thumbs up for this draft. I think they played it very smart and are very in touch with what the team needs and how to build for the future. But the last team in this division is the Panthers, who with the 6th overall pick took Ike Ekwonu, the tackle, not a quarterback. Ike Ekwonu, the offensive tackle from NC State. They did take a quarterback in the 3rd round. They didn't have a 2nd pick. The 3rd round in Matt Corral. He was the 3rd quarterback taken. It was Kenny Pickett, Desmond Ridder, and then Matt Corral. And then they added, a little bit of depth to their line, both their lines. I think it's okay. Like, there's not really too much to say. I think the Matt Corral pick is a great pick for them. Matt Corral's fairly well-rounded from what a lot of, scouts say. I think it's just great to have you have Sam Darnold starting, so picking a quarterback up anywhere in this draft is a win for them. I do love the Icky pick, though. I think he's going to work really well on the Panthers, and he was my second highest offensive tackle, and they got him at 6. So I am happy for them getting Icky.
I mean, I think push comes to shove. I think the best choice they made was taking a blue chip player at a really important position, and that is Icky at the 6th overall pick instead of reaching for a quarterback.
Yeah.
Because the roster they needed that. They really needed offensive line help to help keep Sam Darnold or whomever the quarterback is upright. So, they didn't have a lot to work with in terms of like high value picks. So again, I think they did the best they could with what they have. They get a solid like finger thumb halfway
Sideways.
across side. Thank you. Horizontal. That was where I was going next. So,
who's your winner in the NFC South for this draft?
I believe that it's the Saints or the Buccaneers or the Falcons. Probably the Falcons, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah,
Bucks were fine too, but
Bucks were fine. But I think I'm going to go with the Falcons as well. A lot of high upside for the Falcons with their draft.
Yes.
And our final is the the NFC West. Stumbling over my words. That's what I said. NFC West. Why don't you start us off with the Rams?
Yeah, so for a team that says FDM picks, they made 8 picks. They didn't have their first pick until the 3rd round. They took not a guy named Strange, who they thought would be available in the 3rd round. But they took Logan Bruce, offensive guard out of Wisconsin. Overall, it's tough because, half their picks were in the 6th round or later. They got Kyron Williams, running back out of Notre Dame, who I like a little bit. They always seem to add running backs and wide receivers, and I think that's smart. They didn't add a wide receiver, but I think adding a running back behind the recovering Cam Akers, Darrell Henderson, nearing the end of his rookie deal and dealing with injuries of his own, I think it's smart, especially with the way they like to run their offense. I mean, if they can get a starting player out of one of their first 3 picks, that's good. But the fact of the matter is, they just didn't have a lot of high value picks to work with, and that's it. It is what it is. All things considered, they got a lot of really good players by trading away their picks. So thumbs up for them.
Yep.
FDM
An honorable mention to the 7th round pick, Russ Yeast. What a name!
Yeast.
10 out of 10. Russ Yeast.
Yeast. I like it. His safety. I hope he makes the team.
Me too. I can move us on though to the Cardinals, who ended up trading.
Oh, they did. Wait, sorry, real quick. They did trade for cornerback Troy Hill, back from Cleveland, and he played well for the Rams back in 2020. So that's actually they only traded a 5th round pick, so that's actually a really solid move for them as well. So again, they did really well with the players that they got from trading away picks. So.
Yeah. And then we move on to the Cardinals, who traded the number 23 overall pick to the Ravens in return for Marquise Brown. I don't think he has a contract yet. I was trying to look into that, but I don't think we have the numbers on a contract for him yet, right?
No, he did not get re-signed yet.
Okay.
But he does. I don't know if they picked up his 5th round option or 5th year option officially, but he has the option of a 5th year option, unlike AJ Brown, because he was drafted in the 1st round.
Yep. So that's where their 1st round pick went. Basically, with their 1st round pick, they got Marquise Brown, who says, this was a little bit of time in the making, that he didn't feel like he didn't love being a part of a run first offense. Lamar Jackson was very upset about that, but he seems very happy. And they went to college together, correct? They're friends.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
They were
Kyler.
Kyler.
Kyler. Yes, that's what
Kyler
I meant.
and Marquise Brown.
Kyler and Marquise Brown went to college together. They're very close. They're very happy to be reunited. But with the rest of their picks, this is another one that's not super splashy, but added some much needed help in areas where they needed improvement. They went back-to-back defensive ends in the 3rd, with the 23rd and 36th in the 3rd round, with Cameron Thomas and Myjai Sanders. Again, I think the huge word for them is depth. I think there are a couple of guys here with higher upside. I think the Keontae Ingram pick is pretty interesting. They're running back from USC. And their second round pick, they took Trey McBride, the tight end from Colorado State, which kind of took me by surprise, but I don't hate it.
I think it's nice because, tight ends normally take some time to like really get their legs under them in the NFL.
Yeah.
And with a recently signing Zach Ertz to an extension, I think the timing will probably work out fairly well. Zach Ertz probably isn't thrilled that he goes from having Dallas Goedert be his heir apparent to getting a new contract for then to be Trey McBride to be his heir apparent. And also Marquise Brown did the Cardinals did pick up Marquise Brown's 5th-year option.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. That was why I was surprised with that pick though, was because of Zach Ertz. But again, like I understand the meaning behind it. Tight end is like you said, takes a little bit of development at the NFL level. It's a lot different than the way tight ends play in college, but it just surprised me. I expected them to go in a different direction. Like I said, I don't hate that pick. I just expected it to go in a different direction.
Yeah, and I think the really interesting thing here is before the DeAndre Hopkins news, I loved the Marquise Brown pickup because I think that's exactly what their offense needed. I think he's a really good complement to Nuke. And you get back the 100th pick back as well. You take the edge out of Cincinnati. Obviously, ideally, DeAndre Hopkins doesn't have to miss 6 games, but at least they have someone now, and it's not AJ Green. I also think Keontae Ingram, running back at USC, is a really interesting pick in the 6th round. Obviously, he's a 6th-round running back. Probably doesn't mean much, but they don't have a lot at running back behind James Conner. So that's intriguing, someone to keep an eye on. But yeah, I mean, they get a solid, like, almost a thumbs up, like probably a thumbs up, but like not fully, like half a thumbs up.
It's like tilting a little bit.
Yeah, it's a diagonal thumbs up, I guess.
Yeah.
They were fine.
Tell us about the Niners.
The Niners spent a 3rd-round pick on a running back for some freaking reason. I hate the Niners, man. They also spent a 3rd-round pick on Danny Gray, wide receiver out of SMU, and they got an outside linebacker, Drake Jackson, out of USC in the 2nd round, which was their first pick. I forget why they don't have a first-round pick. Was it they traded it? Oh, trading up for Trey Lance. That's why. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that overall, like, they had a good draft. I like some of the players that they got. I don't understand. I mean, they made 9 picks. Brock Purdy, quarterback out of Iowa State, just, I don't know. I think he has a funny name. So that made me happy. But, I think linebackers, and then they took a lot of linemen. A couple offensive tackles and a defensive tackle in their later rounds. But like some of these other teams, like it's hard to really judge them too much on what they did because they didn't have a ton of high value picks. Yeah. All in all, like, I think it was good. They didn't move up or down at all through the entire draft. They had 9 picks and they made all of them. I think that, yeah, I mean, Drake Jackson, I think, was a really solid pick. And I think if that's what you have, then great.
Yeah.
I don't know why they picked a running back. I'm really angry.
They said it's worked in the past. We'll try it again.
No, it didn't, though. It didn't.
I'm telling you, that's what their mindset was, though.
But they're idiots. It didn't work. What's his face sucks. Who did they draft in the 3rd round last year? I don't even remember his name, but he sucks.
No, they drafted Eli Mitchell.
No, they drafted him in the 6th round, Ashley.
Oh, fuck.
They drafted... Stop. Now I have to edit that, Ashley. Gosh dang it.
I'm sorry.
Who did they draft in the 3rd round last year? I don't remember. Wow. This is really hard. It's a running back. I don't like him.
Music.
I can't. Yeah, you sing it real quick while I figure it out. I can't. Keep going. Can't stop. Trey Sermon. There we go. They drafted Trey Sermon in the 3rd round last year, and he sucked. He didn't do anything all season. Elijah Mitchell outplayed him, and why did they draft it? Again, the comments are just so delayed that it's painful because after I say his name, I said I'm seeing Trey Sermon, and we're telling we've got people yelling at Ashley for cursing. It's fantastic. Yeah,
I am HR, Dan.
Actually, I'm pretty sure term is HR, but that's beside the point. Yeah, I don't think it's stupid. It's a dumb draft. I give him a thumbs down just for taking a running back in the 3rd round when they don't need one.
You get a little bit of an angle because the guy's name is Brock
No.
Purdy. Brock Purdy.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That was their best pick, was Brock Purdy. Either him or Drake Jackson, but it might be Brock Purdy. Also, Tariq Castro Fields, cornerback, is just really fun. So I don't know. They drafted some solid names. Womack, Burford. I don't know. Good names. They drafted Tyrion Davis Price, running back. Just shut up. I hate the Niners.
Nothing is coming close to Russ Yeast. I think he is the name winner of the NFC.
Julius Chestnut. Well, yeah, he's not the NFC. I don't think he got drafted either. All right, last team, the Seahawks. Tell me what you think.
Seahawks, with their first round pick, took the basically consensus third-ranked offensive tackle in Charles Cross from Mississippi. That's another fun name, Boye Mafe, the offensive lineman.
Boye Mafe.
Yeah.
So you were kind of really close, but not at all, actually, in a different way.
Oh, you did have a Kobe Bryant, which the announcers really loved because Pete Carroll loves basketball.
Well, I was going to say that Kobe Bryant was also one of the better picks.
He was.
He was a great value in the 4th round.
He was.
So that's great.
Yeah. But yeah, I like their picks. Taking Ken Walker in the 2nd with a running back.
They're so stupid.
Yeah.
You took Rashad Penny in the 1st round like 5 years ago. How did that work out? It didn't. You don't need to take running backs in the 2nd round, you morons. Your roster sucks. Take a better, more important position. You morons. You stupid idiots. This is why Russell Wilson wanted to leave, you stupid idiot morons. I'm talking to you, Pete Carroll, you stupid idiot.
And that's the segment we like to call Unhinged, where you just release your anger about the Seahawks. That will be a weekly event. It's
Bo Mountain. That's exciting. Pretty sure he went to high school with my cousin.
That's fun.
Yeah, so fun.
He went to college in Rutgers, so probably like a lot of people go to Rutgers.
Why not take a wide receiver in the 2nd round instead of in the 7th and in the 7th? They took a dude out of Lenore Rhine. That's exciting. I like that. As well as Bo Mountain. They took Kenneth Walker in this. I hate them.
For the names, I give you a good thumbs up. For the draft,
2 thumbs down, which is probably too harsh, but I don't care.
But good names. It's a fun roster.
No, actually, they did have a really solid draft, but it's thumbs up, but also a thumbs down. They get one of each. Yep.
Solid. Seahawks.
Just don't take a running back.
Charles Cross was all right.
Yeah, it's a good pick. And Boye Mafe was a good pick. Kobe Bryant's a good pick. Just don't take a running back in the 2nd round, idiots.
Yeah. Who's your winner from this division?
Who's in this division? Seahawks, Niners. I mean, Cardinals. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think they all kind of sucked a little bit for different reasons.
Yeah, I agree.
If we're counting trades, it's the Rams, but
yeah. I think if you're just counting the draft, I like the Cardinals the best in this division.
Yeah, it's fair.
So our winners for each division was the Cardinals, the Falcons, the Eagles, and the Lions. Those are your NFC winners.
I think the Eagles had the best draft.
I agree.
And for once, I'm not even saying that
as a homer.
I'm not saying it as a homer because if anything, I would be saying the opposite as a homer. I think that's what people don't understand. We, as a group, are not homering in a positive way. We homer in a negative way 99% of the time, with the exception of Joel Embiid. That's basically it. The rest of the time, we were negative. So, yeah, just throwing that out there. But we had a great draft, especially when you throw in AJ Brown.
Yeah. Oh, I also forgot to mention when we were talking about the Giants that Joe Shane fired a bunch of like top level scouts, a pair of them. One of them was Chris Pettit, and there's a lot of, I'll call them rumors because they don't have a lot of facts behind them, that right before the draft, there was a lot of buzz about Charles Cross being the offensive tackle that the Giants liked the best. And from the circles closest to the Giants, it's seeming like Joe Shane gave that information to Chris Pettit to see if it would leak, and it did, and then he got fired right after the draft. Drama.
Wild.
Crazy. I forgot to mention that. I meant to mention that when I was talking about the Giants, but totally forgot to. So, you want to lead us out, Duncan? Where can we find you?
You can find me probably crying in my shower when the Sixers get swept in the second round because Joel Embiid had his face broken, and the dude didn't even get called on a foul for it. Screw you, Pascal Siakam, and screw you, Toronto Raptor fans and
Doc.
announcers. Also, Doc Rivers for not for playing DeAndre Jordan any amount of minutes in the playoffs because he's garbage, and I think I could play equally as well as center.
Thank you for coming to our NBA podcast.
NBA. Whoops. B-ball Paul's shooting free throws, so I'm focused on that.
I know. Your Twitter handle?
Playoff Michael.
Okay.
What? Oh, Adam P. Duncan 75. I moved on. I was talking about the Sixers. It's fine.
Yes, but we talked about where can we find you. You said crying about the Sixers. You went off on a rant about the Sixers.
Crying in my shower. That's where you can find me. I'm probably not going to be tweeting if we suck. So don't find me on Twitter.
You're not allowed. You're restricted. Once we hit the hour mark, this show goes off the rails. You can find me at Ashley_Marie on Twitter with 2 A's at the beginning of Ashley. You can find both of us on the Undroppables premium Discord channels, which you can get access to by going to patreon.com/theundroppables. For a small fee a month, you get unlimited access to the Undroppables team. You can find us here every Wednesday live at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can stream us any day of the week after the podcast drops. Spotify, Apple Music. You can watch the video playback on YouTube. You can find me tomorrow in the movie theater with my Wanda Maximoff sweatshirt and my Scarlet Witch headpiece because it's Doctor Strange week.
Movie theater.
If you ruined that for me, if you ruined that post-credit scene for me,
I'm seeing the movie like 20 minutes before her, so I'm just gonna. I could just text you throughout the whole thing. And just spoil it like
I have your address. Like I literally would come kill you.
I invited you. I said that's fine. It'd be nice to see you.
Friendship.
And honestly, if the Sixers lose tonight, I might welcome it.
Okay. So, just let me know. I'll be there. You can pick your poison. But yeah, thanks for joining us. You can find us here next week talking about the AFC conference and their drafts. And then later on
the American Football Conference.
Yep, that's their name.
Okay, bye
AFCC.
Everyone.
Bye.